Good morning to you once again. Thank you so much for being with us here on Morning at NTV. We get to look at another conversation that is very critical for your understanding and digestion as you pick up the matter of the day, knowing very well that in a few days there's some changes, especially in tax policy, that are going to be affecting you directly and indirectly, and you must be aware of them, therefore to be mindful of them, therefore to plan for them. Speaking of planning, good morning at NTV. We planned to just have that conversation around the financial year 2026-2027, the reality budget for transformation, or is it a rhetoric? A politics of Uganda's budget beyond the figures. Now, Uganda entering this financial year with public debt estimated at more than $32 million, while international institutions, including the IMF, are repeatedly cautioning us about the rising debt vulnerabilities and the need for stronger domestic revenue mobilization and, of course, expenditure discipline. Now, speaking of mobilization, you are being expected to collect 44 trillion Ugandan shillings of the 84.3 trillion Ugandan shillings budget that we have for the next financial year. And so that speaks into domestic revenue collection. Yet it is merely an economic conversation to some, because political conversations around budgets are not about accountability, about transparency. They're just statements of power for some people in their corridors. And this reveals something even deeper about government values, about the interests of people and how they are being protected or not being protected, and who is actually bearing the cost of policy choices as we examine the financial expectations for the next financial year. Now, joining me is Mr. Aineviona, who is an expert in oil and gas, which is one of the low-hanging fruits that we have been told by government that this time round we'll be able to see some results, at least some fruit, little in size, but it will be meaningful in terms of impact, medium size and long term. Good morning to you. You're most welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, Ugandans. My name is Thomas Aineviona, and thanks for having me again.
Okay, you were able to read and hear the budget reading last week. From what was shared, of course, full monetization of the economy is the direction we are taking. What were your take-homes specifically to your sector?
Thank you very much, members, the viewers of NTV and my fellow Ugandans. First of all, before I handle the issues of budget in my area of oil and gas, I would like to congratulate all the ministers that have been appointed, and also praying for those that have not been sworn in previously, but we hope for the best. For the financial year 2026-2027, there is a lot more Ugandans are expecting. And comprehensively, the budget is not measured in terms of trillions of money. The budget is only measured if it solves the Ugandan problems, especially when it takes us to the economic development. However, by and large, the economy reaching on double digit, the whole back is being brought up by expectations from oil and gas production, which is to start as soon as possible. But I think the 84.3 trillion, the country's budget, and the 33.6, the debt issue. You know, the issue is about sometimes we lack research. We cannot say that maybe, because most of the people have been talking about the debt burden, the debt burden, the debt burden. You look at the narrative of the countries that are surrounding us. Should we think that Uganda is the worst? You look at the research from International Monetary Fund. Uganda is not the worst. Actually, in Africa, in East Africa, let us first go back. In 1986, we were the last five, the bottom five. We are among the bottom five in terms of the economies. But right now, we are the 13th in Africa among the 54 countries that we have. Now, apart from being exaggerated, maybe the question for Ugandans should be, if we borrow, is that money going to do enough to Ugandans? Are they going to maybe finance the relevant or priority issues that we are talking about so far?
In your perspective, what would be the relevant and priority things that need to be invested in by government right now?
We already have the priorities. For example, on my side of oil and gas, we have to appreciate the country that most of the finances for the previous years have been able to finance infrastructure that supports oil and gas. Now, if you look at the infrastructure development in terms of the East African crude oil pipeline, that is also a debt. And you know how many jobs are we going to create from that? I want you to look at, we have to understand that or appreciate that in Uganda, the formal employment, both government and private sector, we have less than 3 million. And our labor, our available people to absorb are around 20 million. So, meaning if we can have infrastructure, we can have enterprise development, you know, that will increase our tax base. Mm-hmm. And also tax administration is very, very important in this case, which will also help us achieve what we expect. 44 trillions that we expect as a revenue for this country. To get that, you have to work hard as a country, as an economy.
So on that note, you do have the Uganda Revenue Authority hitting its target mark for the closing financial year. So there's high expectations that they will be able to follow through in the next financial year. But you've mentioned two critical things, jobs. So every budget speech is always having an element of creating more jobs. And yet youth unemployment is remaining one of Uganda's biggest challenges, given that the demography has now flipped. How many jobs specifically do you see this budget addressing in those 365 days of implementation?
As I said initially, that...
Or where are the jobs? Where do you see the jobs being
created? Actually, but before that, I need to give you this background. We need to appreciate that youth unemployment is a global crisis issue, whereby it's not only the Uganda as a country. But however, that's what I told you initially, that every budget, if the budget does not address the issues of unemployment for the youth or for Ugandans, that's not the right budget. That's what I can say. But now, for example, in this budget, there is actually, when we talk about priorities, there is wealth creation. That is a very matter that maybe even the president of Uganda has always emphasized. But how do you rate that, or how do you measure? It's not about typically saying that maybe we are going to develop wealth creation or to enhance it. You can even say you are going to enhance it, but the implementation and coordinating it is a problem. And what is lacking here is the implementation. It is by hearsay, it is there. No, wealth creation. Now, if we empower what we call enterprise development, so that even Priscilla and other people can happen to develop themselves on their own ways, you are increasing the tax base as you are creating more jobs.
You have talked about the challenge being implementation. What exact leakages have you realized that are leading to poor implementation of some of these government programs?
Actually, the issue is about to, maybe I want to appreciate what has been done, for example, but we need to understand that as Ugandans, what people have been talking about is about corruption. The budget, the money is there. Even the debt shouldn't be a problem as long as it is servicing the what? The right priorities, as we said. But the issue is about mismanagement of funds that has been rising here and there, complaining about. Follow-up has been an issue. Maybe this budget, the reason why I would maybe say that it is going to work this time, okay, to the maximum, is because of the slogan that the president has brought in.
The sloganing is okay,
yes.
But then when it comes to, practices being put and measures being put, it's a different thing for you to say and really prove your statement that you know that this budget this time round is going to work. If they have not implemented the recommendations that I want to hear from you on how they can really close some of these leakages and gaps in implementation, if they are not dealt with in the next financial year, then we're going to be back at the same thing, dealing with the same issue of youth continuously being unemployed or locked out of unemployment because of those gaps and leakages.
No, I want to promise Ugandans, especially when you look at the energy that is now being that is going to be put in, especially even the way it has started, even the cabinet setup, you know, the center of policy, it has created, or it has just created confidence to Ugandans and also trust to investors that something will take place. In terms, you know, let me tell you this, as long as I have seen Honorable Byamukama, in his first 1 week, he went to Mitiana Mubende Road and staged there and said, you know what, you contractor, you were supposed to finish your contract 2027. Now, why asking for more 1 year extension? And the contractors, I think they released the information, the leakage that you are talking about, that you know what, every invoice we have been charged, is it 36% as a kickback? Which has hindered, even by the time of getting the contract, maybe we paid amount of money to get the what? The contract. Now, you can see the resilience of the minister. Meaning that budget, if that money is sent for infrastructure or maybe worker-related issues, works, it means that money will be monitored. So the trust that we have so far is in our leaders. There is nothing. There is some improvement if you can look at this. But for the side of our oil and gas, this government, to reach that double digit, to reach the 10.2%, expectations is lying on oil and gas production. However, you need to have side B or plan B, just in case. But
the realization of those benefits will be in the following financial year after 2026, 2027.
You know, when you expect to hit 100% and you score 75%, that's a distinction. It can be
yes, but between you and me, we know it won't be 75% because not even a mango tree that bears, you know, like can have over 100 mangoes on a tree. It doesn't start with 100 mangoes. It starts with 2 mangoes, 3 mangoes, which may not have immediate impact.
But if we score 75% on our budget priorities, I think it will be a distinction. But by and large, I want you to trust, I want Ugandans to trust our current cabinet ministers and even the parliament. So the issue is that if we trust them, I think we shall hold them accountable at the end. But me, I strongly believe that in terms of when we have the first oil, everything will be okay. The issue is about just in case. What can we do in case we have delays in the first oil? That's what I wanted to find out. Because it is a projection. Yeah, it's not a projection. Yet here. And no, it's no longer a projection now. It's a reality. Because we have done what it takes to make sure that we are ready. Yes, but according to the statistics, the different projects that we're talking about are not yet at 100%. So if they're not yet at 100% and we are closing, I mean, 1st July is in a few days, then that means they're going to need some time. No, we are not saying to reach 100% for that oil production you're talking about to start. It can start in September, but even in 4, 5 months, 6 months to maybe 31st of June, 30th of June 2027, we shall be able to have realized that this 75%. What I can trust, I want you to build trust in Ugandans is that they should feel comfortable that this budget will realize good fruits for the entire Ugandans. Now, because we are looking at employment for the youth especially, which will be created, when these value chains are being maybe worked on properly, we are looking at sustainable infrastructure development, you know, in terms of roads, if those roads are well maintained. Health sector, those are priorities. You know, the president has already put in a lot of money in terms of, has doubled PDM. The Myoga has been also financed.
Okay.
I strongly believe that oil and gas is catered for. Maybe health sector, of course, has a bigger budget as usual. Maybe if these epidemics can come in like Ebola and whatsoever to frustrate the economy. But I strongly believe that we are going to, this year, we shall be able to achieve something.
All right, Thomas Ineviona, thank you so much for your vote of confidence in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, as they have planned for the next financial year to ensure that at the end of the 365 days of 2026-2027's budget, there's actually full monetization